Those last two songs really hit where we are today in terms of today's lesson and about some things that we're going to be talking about as we are still on the mountain in Sinai in Exodus chapter 19. We have seen that God has led his people out of Egypt with a mighty hand and outstretched arm. He himself has worked wonders. He himself has done what no other person could, what no other being can. He is God. And those that are on the mountain are in the presence of holiness. And as we talk about holiness, I hope one of the things we're getting, though we may not have nailed it down quite concretely, when we're talking about holiness, we're talking about something that is completely other, something that is different than we are. And as we come to this God, we recognize that he is something other than what we are. And as we approach him, we see that this is the case. As they approach Mount Sinai and they see the smoke, they see the thunder, they hear the thunder, they see the lightning, they hear the trumpet blast. As the ground quakes and all this happens, they are filled with awe in the true sense of the word, of the fright and the terror and all of that, but yet still the unbelievable wonder that they are experiencing in all of this. And so as we approach this God who is holy, we come to this God who is completely different than we are, is amazing in all of what he has done. And as I take a look at what we are looking at, particularly today, I am viscerally struck with images and with ways of thinking that are beyond my ability to speak. And so we're going to let the Bible speak an awful lot today. And as I've said before, I believe that as God's people, we have our responsibility to try to somehow grasp, somehow get in mind who God is and what he is, and try to explain to the best of our ability. But we also realize that we come to a point where we are just quaking on the mountain, where there are things that we just can't understand. And yet we would seek to try to do that. And as we talk about these words that we use for God, I am struck that our minds really can't get a hold of them. We've lost the ability to think of some of these words. And so when we're talking about holiness and glory, glory is part and parcel of his holiness. It's part of what that holiness is. And so we're going to talk at length about this holiness. And we find, as we take a look at glory and we take a look at what is going on here, we find that in a lot of ways, we find out that holiness, it moves. And it is dynamic. It is not static. It is not something that we just take a look at and we say, glory is glory, and there it is, and we can crystallize it and stick it on a shelf and have done with it, or anything like that. There's nothing like that. Glory is holiness, is dynamic, and it is moving. And as I take a look at the images for holiness, I am struck with how many times we see in the Bible some storm imagery. And let me tell you something. You know, Isaiah, he cries out, or the seraphim and the angels in heaven in Isaiah chapter 6, they cry out, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord. The whole earth is full of his glory." The whole earth. And so as I'm taking a look at what's going on here outside, and I see his creation, and I see all of that, and we talk about how glorious the day is and how beautiful it is. As we were driving in and we saw the fall colors, and it just seemed to cling on this year because we just haven't had those killing frosts yet. It's glorious out there, but it is glorious in the sense that God has created it. It's glorious in the sense that he has made this. And the beautiful sunshine and all of this. But we find in the Bible that the Bible is full of his glory. And so as I was taking a look at passages, trying to extract something that we could talk about and that we could latch on to understand his glory, I recognize that the passages that I'm looking at here are only just a sample of it. And as I'm talking and as you're listening and as we engage in these texts, I hope that you are also thinking in your mind, wow, you know what? That's a text that we could have talked about, and that's a text we could have talked about. We could have talked about hundreds of them. We talked about all of them. Because in a sense, what we have in the Bible is we have a movement. We have the movement of God. as he seeks to redeem his people. And so there's movement. But so much of what we have in the Bible is this storm imagery, and there is something absolutely powerful about a storm, isn't there? We can't control it. Hurricanes come, lightning comes, all of that. I remember going to camp with someone when I was young, and I remember him saying, one of these days when I'm rich, I'm going to create a climate-controlled bubble all over camp, so it stays at a constant 76 degrees, and there will be no rain, and there won't be any humidity or anything like that. Well, then, just can't do that. I'm glad. I'm glad that we can't control the weather. I'm glad that there are things that remind us that God is God and we're not. And so there is this imagery, and so as we take a look at Exodus 9:16 and following, it says, on the morning of the third day, and we've read this before, haven't we? On the morning of the third day, there was thunder and lightning with a thick cloud over the mountain and a very loud trumpet blast. And we have all of this. We have smoke. And we have all this storm imagery here. As we take a look at some other passages, I want us to spend some time in the Psalms because the Psalms talks about a lot of this. And in Psalm chapter 29, all of 29, is an unbelievably beautiful passage. But it says, ascribe to the Lord, O mighty ones, ascribe to the Lord glory and strength. Ascribe to the Lord the glory due his name. Worship the Lord in the splendor of his holiness. The voice of the Lord is over the waters. The God of glory thunders. The Lord thunders over the mighty waters. The voice of the Lord is powerful. The voice of the Lord is majestic. The voice of the Lord breaks the cedars. The Lord breaks in pieces the cedars of Lebanon. He makes Lebanon skip like a calf, Syrian like a young wild ox. The voice of the Lord strikes with flashes of lightning. The voice of the Lord shakes the desert. The Lord shakes the desert of Kadesh. The voice of the Lord twists the oaks and strips the forest bare. And in his temple all cry, glory. The Lord sits enthroned over the flood. The Lord is enthroned as king forever. The Lord gives strength to his people. The Lord blesses his people with peace. We see all this and we see movement. We see that God is a force to be reckoned with. This is who he is. Psalm 144, 5 and 8. And this is a passage that I've heard in several different contexts, but in there it says, part your heavens, O Lord, and come down. Touch the mountains so that they may smoke. Send forth lightning and scatter the enemies. Shoot your arrows and rout them. Reach down your hand from on high. Deliver me and rescue me from the mighty waters, from the hands of foreigners. And we see what is going on here is David is appealing to God, who is the God that moves, the God that works in these unbelievable ways. And in Exodus, I think we have something that is a little bit on the different side. And we talked about this passage the other day too, as we are going through and we're looking at the various aspects of what these passages have to say about these different parts of God. And we find that Moses is asking for God to show him his glory. And it says that the Lord is pleased with Moses. And he says, I will do the very thing you have asked because I am pleased with you. And I know you by name. And he says, now show me your glory. And the Lord said, I will cause all my goodness to pass in front of you, and I will proclaim my name, the Lord, in your presence. I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. But you cannot see my face, for no one may see me and live. And there is a place near me where you may stand on a rock. When my glory passes by, I will put you in the cleft of the rock and cover you with my hand until I have passed it by. Then I will remove my hand and you will see my back, but my face must not be seen. I want us to look at this. The glory of the Lord is powerful, it is moving, and he is about to show Moses his glory. But do we see something there? He hides Moses and he passes by. Almost like a storm. And he takes his hand away. And you can see me as I am passing by. There is a dynamic there. There is a power there. We see this movement in all of this. In Exodus chapter 14, we see that there is glory that is happening. We see that he is doing things in order to redeem his people. We see that he is doing things in powerful ways. And in Exodus chapter 14, the people, they are leaving Egypt finally. But the Egyptians are scratching their heads thinking, what have we done? We have lost all of our labor. And so they start to pursue the Israelites. And the Lord said to Moses, tell the Israelites to turn back and encamp near Pi-Hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea. They are to encamp by the sea directly opposite Baal-Zephon. Pharaoh will think the Israelites are wandering around the land in confusion, hemmed in by the desert. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them. But I will gain glory for myself through Pharaoh and all his army. And the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. So the Israelites did this. Can we imagine what God did in that particular situation? He moved in powerful ways. The Egyptian army is coming. There's no way out, only a sea. And God parts the waters and glorifies himself. And that glory is a movement, and that glory is powerful. And then when the Israelites get onto the other side, he closes those waters over. There's movement. Psalm 119, we know this is, or Psalm 19, I'm sorry. Psalm 19, we know this passage very well. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they display knowledge. There is no speech or language where their voice is not heard. Their voice goes out into all the earth. Their words to the end of the world. In the heavens he has pitched a tent for the sun, which is like a bridegroom coming forth from his pavilion, like a champion rejoicing to run his course. It rises at one end of the heavens and makes its circuit to the other. Nothing is hidden from its heat. But do we see something here? We see movement. It's not that it is static at all. With the universe moving in the way that it moves by God ordering it for it to be the way that it is every time, every morning that the sun comes up. It is God moving it, and the sun is glorifying its creator by doing exactly what it was created to do. We see that. But I think that there is something that is also very unusual here, because in chapter 19, verse 7, there seems to be a shift. We see all that, and that's the passage that is absolutely amazing to us, and we sing it, and we talk about it. We have songs about this. But then David shifts, and he says, the law of the Lord is perfect, reviving the soul. The statutes of the Lord are trustworthy, making wise the simple. The precepts of the Lord are right, giving joy to the heart. The commands of the Lord are radiant, giving light to the eye. The fear of the Lord is pure, enduring forever. The ordinances of the Lord are sure and altogether righteous. They are more precious than gold, than much pure gold. They are sweeter than honey from the comb. By them is your servant warned. In keeping them there is great reward. I take a look at all of this, and I see all this, but do we see that really what is happening is, as the Lord in his glory is presenting the law, as the Lord is giving his precepts and his commands, do we see what is going on here? The law of the Lord is perfect. What do? They revive the soul. The statutes of the Lord are trustworthy. What do? They make wise the simple. There's movement. There's growth. There's power. There is all of this. There's a dynamic. In Romans 6:4, and we're going to go again. I take a look at these passages and I think about how much there is in the Bible that is talking about all of these concepts. And the passage that I choose may not be the passages that you would choose. But I take a look at Romans 6, and in all of this, we're talking about the salvation that we have in Jesus Christ. We're dead to sin and we're alive to Jesus. We understand all of this and what is going on there. But we understand also that it is really because of the power of God in the resurrection of Jesus Christ that all this is possible. And so Paul writes, what shall we say then? Shall we go on sinning so that the grace may increase? By no means. We died to sin. How can we live in it any longer? Or don't you know that all of us who are baptized into Christ Jesus were baptized into his death? We were therefore buried with him through baptism into death, in order that just as Christ was raised from the dead through the glory of the Father, we too may live a new life. And what is going on here is the glory, the power, the dynamic of God who has raised Christ up from death is also at work in us when we submit to baptism and we are raised to a new life to become something else. God's glory. God is glorified in all of that. In Romans 8:21, we see all of creation in this. We see that I consider our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. The creation waits in eager expectation for the sons of God to be revealed. For the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the glorious freedom of the children of God. We see power. We see movement. We see dynamic. All of this is what is going on here in God's glory. And that is part and parcel of his holiness. His holiness is glorious. And it affects a change in all that is around it. I am reminded of the song, All Things Praise Thee. I don't know if you remember that song. But it talks about all things praise Thee, and it talks about sun and moon, and it talks about all of creation, and it talks about all of that, and then it asks a question. It says, all things praise Thee, all these things. And the last line is, Lord, may we. And I think of that and I think, everything is doing what it is supposed to do. Except for us. And so the question is, how we glorify. How do we do this? And what we have to understand is that when we are talking about glorifying, when we're talking about that, it's not just a singing a song. We sing the song, we will glorify the Lord of Lords, we will glorify the King of Kings. We sing these songs. And it's right and proper for us to do that. But we also must understand that what we are doing also is that we, in our doing what we are meant to do, what we were created to do, then we add to that glory and we glorify the God who is glorified. And so Romans 2:7. In Romans 2, it's talking about people who don't have any excuse. It's talking about judgment. It's talking about all of this. But the one thing that it does say is, to those who by persistence in doing good seek glory, honor, immortality, he will give eternal life. And we see, so what is going on is that the people of God need to be putting their actions to work in order to be glorifying God. In John 15:8, it is a passage of the vine and the branches, and we can go ahead and start in verse 5. It says, I am the vine, you are the branches. If a man remains in me and I in him, he will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If anyone does not remain in me, he is like the branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish and it will be given you. This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. Just as God acts, just as God is dynamic, we too have laid upon us the responsibility to glorify God in our actions, in what we do. 1 Corinthians 10:31, we know this. Whatever you do, whether you eat or drink, or in whatever you do it all for the glory of God. And what we find here is that this is something that we must be absolutely, completely dedicated to do when we do this. The reason why I'm talking about holiness, one of the reasons that I've done this, is because I am very concerned about the state of holiness among God's people. I see so much that is going askew, wrong. I see so much that we fall into traps. And I'm concerned. So I want to tell you a little bit of a story that again points out what I'm talking about. I was talking with a colleague of mine, a teacher, and she was talking about a student. And she just, and we passed by the student, and one teacher said, "Who was that?" And so she was saying who it was, and she said, "Yeah, I had an interesting experience with that child's mother." Okay, well, what's that? And so we were walking along, and she was talking. He said, "We were in the church parking lot. We had gotten out of church. We go to the same church. It's one of those mega churches somewhere. So you don't necessarily always know who's in there or whoever is in there. And while we were there, she saw me and she got out of her car. And on her car, she had a bumper sticker. It was a local Christian radio station. And she proceeded to chew me out for perceived things that I was doing against her child, right there. She was yelling at me in the church parking lot as we had gotten out of worship with a bumper sticker with a Christian radio station on it. And the teacher said, the irony was not lost on me. Now this teacher happens to have a faith. As one professor says, let us not act in such a way that when people see us, we have left God with egg on his face. I hated that phrase. But if we are not acting in the way that we are supposed to be, if we are not doing what we are supposed to do, then we are not glorifying God. We need to make sure that our actions are in keeping with God's actions. And finally, what we find, though, is that as we glorify and as we work toward God's glory, we find that God himself, he glorifies us. In John 17:22, Jesus says this. This is his last prayer before he's going to the Father. He's in the garden. He knows he's going to be betrayed. He knows that he is going to be crucified. He knows it's all over. And he is praying for his disciples in this very difficult time. He is not just praying for himself, but he says, my prayer is not for them, the apostles, even alone. I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message, that all of them may be one, Father, just as you are in me and I am in you. May they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. I have given them the glory that you gave me, that they may be one as we are one. I in them, and you in me, so that they may be brought to complete unity. Then the world will know that you sent me, and I have loved them even as you have loved me. And so there is a sense where there is glory that is already there. In 1 Corinthians 2:7-9, no, we declare God's wisdom, a mystery that has been hidden, and that God destined for our glory before time began. None of the rulers of this age understood it, for if they had, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. However, it is written, what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, and what no human mind has conceived, these things God has prepared for those who love him. God glorifies us. We spoke about the passage in 2 Corinthians 3:18 last week when we were talking about the difference between Sinai, the Mount Sinai, and the mountain that we are brought to. And what we find is that God is changing us from glory to glory as we are walking through life, and he is moving in our lives, and as we are becoming more and more like him, as we are conforming more and more to his likeness, as we are becoming holy, as we are living this life, he is glorifying us, and we, in our actions, are glorifying him, and it's all working together for all of that glory. But there will come a day when we'll be changed from this glory to another glory. And how powerful and wonderful that will be. 1 Corinthians 15:42-44. So it will be with the resurrection of the dead. The body that is sown imperishable is raised imperishable. It is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness. It is raised in power. It is sown a natural body. It is raised a spiritual body. God moving powerfully in his world shaking the foundations of the earth and shaking the foundations of hell and shaking our very selves so that we can be found whole in His sight. If this is the day that you've decided that you want to be filled with glory, there's no time like the present to come. If you're sitting at home and you are wanting to somehow make this right with God, and you know that you're at home and we're here, please call us. We'll do whatever we can. Come, stand and sing.
Would you live for Jesus and be always pure?